a presentation on the jury process for Wiki Loves Africa. The idea is behind this is to let us know, like to show everybody what goes on behind the scenes, but also hopefully to guide any of the national juries in the choices that they make. So I know that we are very fortunate to have some of our previous international jurors on with us. So I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope that you can also help. In some cases, feel free to chip in, and we can discuss like some of the process. So I'm going to give the bare bones of what the process is, and then we can talk about like the decisions you need to make and those kind of things. At the moment, I'm sticking specifically to the photographic jury. I think it's very important that that the video jury is a whole different story. And I'm not sure, I'd love to hear, but I'm not sure that any of the national teams are doing video juries yet. So if you can let me, if you are, that would be interesting, but I think that's a whole different session. So we can get started. Does anyone want to say anything before we get started? No? Okay, good. Let me make sure I've got the chat open so that I can see what you guys are saying. Okay, right. So let's get going then. So it's a very, very simple contest structure that Wiki Loves Africa has. We have the international jury, which is entirely separated from the regional jury, the national juries. So the national juries are independent of the international team. They're entirely self-governed. It's up to the organizers, the local organizers, how they run those and who comes out, how that happens, who's involved. We obviously give guidelines, and we can share those guidelines if you haven't already seen my previous session on national juries. But it would anyway. So it's all national juries. They run so that you can celebrate the photographs from within your area. So they run according to the category according to the categories for that national space. So unless there's in Nigeria, as always, there's always some slight different complexity. And so I'm not entirely sure how they run those different things. I know that there's been a balance between having a national prize or national appreciation versus different communities that are also operating and running Wiki Loves Africa programs. So that's a different complexity. But so there's the national juries, which are completely independent. And unlike, say, Wiki Loves Monuments, the winners of the national prizes don't influence the international jury. The international jury is completely separated from the decisions made at the national level. So if you win a prize in Rwanda, it doesn't mean that you won't be winning a prize in, or vice versa. It doesn't mean just because you won in Rwanda that you will be considered at the international stage. It doesn't work like that. So the international jurors for Wiki Loves Africa are basically made up of professional photographers. We prefer to have African-based photographers, so people who understand the context, understand the situation, understand the challenges of doing photography like at a quality level in Africa. Professional filmmakers, we have some with us today, as well as professional photographers who've been on the jury. We also sometimes include specialists in the theme. We haven't this last year, and we haven't for a while, but it is possible sometimes to do that. So if it was specifically about food, it would be nice to have, say, a chef or someone who knew about the nuance of presentation of food. And then also we like to have people who, at least one or two global experienced communists, Wikimedia communists. So people who are experienced in Wikimedia Commons, and normally that comes with them being either a very good amateur photographer or a professional photographer themselves. So that's the kind of the balance of the international jury that we have. Okay, and the international jury process is it's quite complicated. We do a first review round where I'm sure many of you have probably participated, but we are at the moment, you can volunteer for this. We send out a request for people who would like to review the first round of images. We have this year we have over 30,000 images that have been submitted. It's a bumper year. We are very excited. Hilary has done like an incredible job, and everybody, it's been a huge amount of enthusiasm around Wiki Loves Africa. But 30,000 images is a lot to review, and we cannot ask our international judges to do that. So we have this, especially as we know there are varying degrees of quality that we receive as part of the submissions. And so we prefer to, so we ask the community, the Africa community, and the wider community to submit or to volunteer to review the images. And in that, it's a yes/no round. Basically, it's this is terrible, this is fantastic. So yes, it's fantastic, it goes through. Oh my God, that's terrible. It gets left behind. But it's not just made on the decision of one person. Because of the montage tool, you can have you can have infinite numbers of people viewing each image, and then that all gets tallied up. And then each image gets an amount that then allows them to determines whether they go through or not. So as we know, photography is very subjective, like what you like, what you see. But there are some very obvious kind of elements that we'll get into that just now that you don't, that make for a good photograph or make for a clear photograph. And so it's about clearing through that. So sifting out the quality from the quantity. In the first round, so that's the first review, and then there's the first round, and that's when the international jury gets involved. Mm-hmm. So the first review is from the community, and then the second stage is the first round with the international jury. And that's when the international jury hopefully are only viewing around 2,000 images, so that it's quite a reduction in how many images have been vetted. And we're hoping that we'll be able to, normally we have to deal with about 18,000, but getting it down to 20,000, from 30,000 to about 3,000 is quite a lot. And during that first round, again, they go through the first yes/no, like it's in the contest or it's out. And then the second round is a rating round, and the third round is a ranking round. So I'm going to explain this in a little bit more detail just now, and then there's a final discussion. But that's just the kind of the process in a nutshell. So as I said, in the first review round, the quality contenders are separated. So the quality images are separated from the mediocre or poor quality. So it's just like a sieving process, basically. And what they are asked to consider, the first reviewers are asked to consider relevant to theme, so that like not to include, say, selfies or an obvious picture of a girlfriend who's just idly standing there, or a certificate. We've had all sorts of things that have been shared, and it's just to get those kind of things out. There's also, and things that are like completely not related. So very often we have people who, because they see it's Wiki Love Africa, they don't actually see what the theme is. And so they've been a tourist in Africa. So we have hippos and lions and pictures from their safari. So, and which is not relevant to the theme. So it would have been relevant probably to home and habitat, but not many of the other themes that we've had. Then the other thing that they look at is like very surface image quality. So like, is it blurred? Unintentionally blurred? Does the blurring make sense? Is it pixelated, as in, is it too small, or has it been blown up? Is it at weird angles? We had a whole load of images that were taken on the back, obviously on the back of a bicycle or a motorbike, and they were at all of these weird angles, and they didn't do anything for the image themselves. And then, do they meet the contest criteria? So are there copyright violations? Are there watermarks? Photographers very often keep their watermarks on the images because that's how it works with Shutterstock and in the kind of like the copyright world, not in the Creative Commons licensed world. And so those don't normally they go through because some of them are quite subtle and people don't see them, but sometimes it's very obvious, and then those get kind of like taken out. And then there's also flagged for suspicious images, so ones that have been obviously AI generated and ones that are more kind of, just don't feel right. But I think those aren't necessarily quality. Those also are considerations that happen in the first round of the international jury. So once all of the images have been reduced down from 30,000 in this year to 2,000, we then ask the lovely international jurors to get involved. Oh, hang on. I think I missed something. No. Sorry. Don't know what's happened. Okay, on the first review, let's go back to the first review round. Does anyone have any questions so far about that process? Has anyone been here? Has anyone been on the first review before? You can raise your hand or you can just put it in the chat if anyone's been on one of the first review rounds for Wiki Loves Africa. No? Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's there's an image, and then you just press yes or no, basically. I can't remember what the actual, I think there's an icon which represents yes and an icon represents no. And so it's pretty simple to make that decision. And it also, you can link through to, so with the way that montage works, you can, when you're looking at the images, you can also check it. So you can go and check on that yourself. So you can go through. Eric, you said that you've been in the first review rounds. Yeah, it's very straightforward. Was there anything in that round that when you were doing it, that you wish you knew about? so that I can answer any questions. Can you think back to when, I know that you've been on our international jury as well, but I wondered if there was something in that first review round that might have sparked something. Anyway, so just keep on adding any of your, if you have anything that you remember from the first review round that you wish you'd known when you were doing that first review, please just put it in the chat and then I can answer it for you. Okay. Right. So then the second is so then we have the first round of the jury, and this is a misleading image. So I'm going to go back to the first review round. But essentially the second stage is the international jury once the first reviewers have finished. And so the first round of the international jury is also a yes and no round. But in their case, they are also looking, because acknowledging that several or many of the people who will be in the first review process are not photographers or professional photographers, but have obviously photographic experience, but they don't have expert photographic experience. And so there's another whittling down from potentially 3,000 images down to using yes and no options, down to we hope that it goes to around about kind of 800 images, 500 to 800 in the next round, which is the second round. But in the first round and the second round, the reviewers are asked, well, the jurors are asked to look at they have specific judging criteria. So encyclopedic value is one of them. And encyclopedic value is many of these photographs, up to 14 and 16% of the photographs that have been entered for Wiki Loves Africa and donated to Wikimedia Commons are on articles that illustrating articles on Wikipedia or other Wikimedia projects. So it's very important that whatever the image is representing, that whatever the image is representing, that they present the subject clearly, and that it's not too many subjects within one image. If you understand that there's not too many different topics within. The idea is always to inform or educate. And so I think that has to be a consideration within the judging criteria. Within the subject matter, is the subject matter relevant to the broadest interpretation of the theme? And so it's also about, again, relevance to the theme, but it's also looking about like, okay, so I'm trying to think of an example with, it's basically allowing for some people might have interpreted the theme quite widely. And so it's looking at that, like, is something close to speaking to the theme, but it hasn't yet hit it, or is it absolutely on theme? Does someone want to say something? Eric said, Eric Chisholm, who's here, he says basically from the first review round, there is a lot of images to sort through. So you have to be brutal with cutting down the images that don't meet a certain standard. And he's absolutely right. And I think that's why the first rounds, both the first review and the first round of the jury, international jury, is so important, because it's about kind of like getting rid of the chaff, is getting out all of the things, the noise, basically, to be able to concentrate on the really good, powerful images. Yeah. So, and that's why we do this kind of like vetting, tiering process. Second, the third consideration that the judges make in both the first and second, the first one is more of a, I'm aware of these things. The second round is very much, do these things, does each image encapsulate these elements? And the third thing is storytelling. Like, how well does the photo invoke the viewer's imagination? Can you see what they're trying to say? Can you be there? Can you feel the reality of it? Those kind of things. Another one is impact. Like, what do you feel when you first view the photo? Is it emotional? Do you have a reaction other than that's a terrible photo or that's an amazing photo? If it's an amazing photo, like, what is the thing that's sparking that reaction, that emotion? With creativity, it has the photograph captured like what the photographer's idea is, or the message, or is it conveying the knowledge that the photographer is trying to share with you? You have to be quite careful with creativity, because this is not an art photo competition. We're not looking for artistic photographs or artistic interpretations or fine art photography. We're looking for representations of Africa in various ways. And so we're not, that's a lot of people think that taking a blurred photograph makes it more artistic or in certain light, but in some cases it just makes it harder to see or what you're trying to say, or it makes it too noisy to actually see it properly. And so you've got to really think. Creativity is great, because if you are a professional, but if you're a newbie, I would go for stuff much more kind of like direct, I think. Beautifully framed, beautifully situated, but not too clever. And not in a kind of like, not too creative, I think, rather than definitely be clever. With technique is more about kind of like the technical expertise of the photographer. So is it well composed? Is it well composed? Is it well presented? Is there a good color balance? Is the lighting interesting, or does it illuminate the subject matter properly? And what are the focal points? So those kind of things that professional photographers and artists are absolutely keyed into. And so those are the kind of the considerations that they make. And then the other one is the focus and the configuration, which is photographs should be in focus, because you need to actually be able to see what you're looking at. And then there should be more, and other things like they should be more than two megabytes, because even beautifully fantastic shots that are under 2 megabytes will not be considered, because they're not very useful for the platform. Eric, and those other jurors who've been here, I see that we have several people we've got Uma, we've got Eric, and we've got Bubakam, who has been on. I'm not sure if he's still on. Would you like to share? Do you want to come on and share like what's your experience of those judging criteria, and what other criteria you used when you were judging? If you can unmute and join me, that would be fabulous.
Hello, Isla.
Hi, Eric.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, just on what we were discussing, Um, it's pretty much the same thing. It's just to make sure that the pictures have value, like she said, encyclopedic value. Make sure that it's actually contributing something to the knowledge base, and make sure it's the picture that is being submitted is in line with the theme. Um, then obviously you look for the qualities, whether it's in the videos or the pictures. Like you said, the artistic qualities, if it's composed properly and all that stuff. Um, yeah, so basically you have to use all these to basically source through, shift the better composed and better done photographs to the top so that everyone else can actually see them, and then we could judge them based on their worth and their value to the project. So yeah, I think that's basically it. It's basically just a sifting process from sorting out the chaff in the first one, and then in the second one, sorting out which one I think we rate with like 5 stars. Which one do you think it has 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars? And then in the
Yeah.
third one, we don't have like a final overview.
Yeah, so the first one is the yes no, as Eric said, and then the second one is a 1 to 5. You rate it from 1 to 5, with 1 being it's terrible, it must leave, to 5 being it's absolutely fantastic. Please let it, please let it stay, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Umar, are you around? Would you like to share? Umar Musa? Or Booba, you're here as well, but I know it's not often easy for you. Okay, no problem. Right, so yes, as I was saying with the second round, we've discussed most of those, but it's the 1 to 5 star. So all of those things are it becomes more concentrated. So the idea behind having professional photographers on the jury is so that it sounds like a lot to consider, but these are almost split-second judgments that they make because of the vast experience they have with how visuals work, with artistic ideas. Yes, Hope, please share about just your question is about the picture size. What is the question with that?
Okay. So I heard you were saying something about the 2 MBs. Is that the limit of the pictures, the size?
That's the minimum limit.
Or that's the minimum? Do we
It's the
have the maximum?
minimum. There is no maximum limit. I mean, obviously within reason, we don't want it to be the size of the moon. But, we don't want it to be like, terabytes just for an image, which is kind of difficult, I think. But for the minimum is 2 megabytes. But we do actually sometimes, and I know it's difficult because sometimes you can reduce quite a big, you can reduce a big image down to KBs but it doesn't work really well. So that kind of compression doesn't really work very well on Wikimedia Commons, and it makes the image much less useful as an illustration tool. So that's why we have a minimum amount, which is 2 megabits, but 2 megabytes. But we enforce that. But we've had some that have come almost through to the final round that we've had to kick out because it's just below the bar. So, and they've been absolutely beautiful. And we've had to say goodbye to them because it's just not useful for Wikimedia. Okay, does that answer, Hope? I hope it answers your question.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Sorry?
Yes, I'm answered on that one.
Okay.
While you were presenting, a question came into my mind about the montage. You said we have something like 30,000 pictures, right?
Yes.
So are they all uploaded to Montage 30,000, or Montage does select some pictures and kick out some already before we start the jury?
So what happens with Montage is that when you are the organizer who sets up Montage, you can set up some variables. So what you do is that we do, and you will, if you're doing a jury process, is that you put your category. So if it's category images, images from Wiki Loves Africa 2025 in Zimbabwe, then that would be, then it would pull in all the images in that category. But you can also select, say, if you uploaded images and you are the organizer, as the organizer, you shouldn't have your images being reviewed because they shouldn't go through for a national prize. So they would then you can take that, or so you can filter out any images that you've uploaded under your username as the organizer, and you can also filter out any images, say, your jury did as well. So that's a filter that you can add. You can also select how, like, the minimum quality, so the minimum kind of like at 2 megabytes. So that will also filter out all of those. And then you will also, so there are about 3 or 4 different filters that you can activate within Montage that will keep some aspects away. But for the 30,000 that are going to come in, we imagine that by using some of those filters, we'll only not have, I don't know, 10, 15 maybe images that won't come through, but the majority will be there. So there will be all 30,000. But what happens, and I think maybe is that if you're a juror, they're not going to see all 30,000 images. What happens is that as a first reviewer, you are assigned X amount of images. So you are assigned, say there are, say there are 60 jurors, 60 reviewers, then you will be assigned probably 500 images. And across that, everybody will be able to see, like, will be able to review, 1,000 images, and each of those images will be seen by 3 different reviewers or 5 different. So you can select that when you're doing the selection for, or when you're putting in the criteria in the Montage, when you're setting up Montage. There's a separate video about that, which I will share in the chat afterwards, which will help you understand better, like the back end of choosing those. Yes, Matusi.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Matusi from Botswana. So I got a question. I just got intrigued. I was a participant for in Botswana, so for this year's competition. So I'm just been wondering, if I volunteer to become a first-round reviewer, would that somehow intrigue some chances of me, or maybe conflict anyhow with the chance of me being selected?
No. No, to answer your question, so what it does is it just means that if you select that the jurors don't see their images, it just means you don't see that image. So you can't make a decision on your image, which helps with conflict of interest. But say if Eric was also in first review or in the international jury, he will see yours and be able to judge yours. So he would be able to make a judgment on your image, and we'll see it. It will be in the contest, but you won't be able to see it. You see what I mean? Yeah. So how Montage does it, it filters out for the jurors any images that are under their username, so that you can't be accused of, you know, of
Oh, yeah.
saying, you know, 5 stars for your image when it's probably, you know, whatever stars it is. Yeah.
Okay, great. No, thanks.
I hope that reassures you.
All right.
So if I'm to volunteer for the first phase, I won't be able to see my own images. Yes, exactly that. You won't be able to see your own images, but everybody else will be able to see them. So you shouldn't be able to judge your own images. That's just not right. Okay, that's kind of like mega corruption. And we're trying to stay away from that. But it doesn't mean that your images don't have a chance of going through and everybody else will be able to. Does that make sense? Yeah, is everyone clear? Does anyone have any questions about that and the montage process or anything else? That's why I've been skeptical of volunteering. Yes, so that's absolutely fine. And please don't be skeptical. Please volunteer. We need as many people as possible, especially photographers. So okay, great. Great, guys. Thanks. Thank you. Any other questions around the first review? Because I know that it's something that's kind of very present at the moment in people's minds. Yeah, the picture quality is a must. It absolutely is. It's very important that it's clear and that it conveys exactly what the subject matter is. Yeah, but not in a dull way. It's a bit of a tricky kind of balance. Okay. All right, so I just want to then go on to the third round, the third ranking round, and that's basically, it's a ranking space, and you'll see on montage that there's kind of like a board of the images, and then you put like the first one that you think is number one, the best one that to you should win the prize in the top right. And then everything's like second, third, fourth, fifth, and then it all comes down to that. So from this, in the second round, we hope to have about between 500 and 300 images, and then that are then reviewed in the second round from the 1 to 5. And then in the third round, we like to get it down to about between 50 and 30 images to be ranked. Because essentially nobody really, so they do their the jurors, and this is not a criticism, it's just human nature, ranks their top 10, and then the rest of them kind of like, nah, I don't really care about those. So they're kind of like a little bit, and then that really messes with the kind of the algorithm of not the algorithm, but the mathematics, basically, the law of averages that montage runs on. So it becomes a problem, like, so that's, if we reduce it to 30, then that's, the more you have in the ranking round, the less kind of, the more you have to drop the last kind of, 20 or whatever it is, or half of them, so that they stay. And on this one, we really do go and ask to look at technical quality. So like, and to go from a quality image to an exceptional image. So we're looking here for those exceptional images that are just outstanding. So yes, it might, an image might fulfill all of those criteria which were on the first round and the second round, but we're looking really for like originality, usefulness, and technical quality. So stuff that are like beautifully shot, beautifully lit, beautifully framed, like the outstanding, the unicorn basically from the batch, the unicorns from the batch. And it's hard. I think it's quite hard, and it's really interesting because especially when you're the organizer, you see like how different people's perceptions are, like how their visual choices and their interpretations of art and what is a good photograph are so wildly different. It's so interesting. from professionals who all have exceptional photographic eyes. They have very different things that they value. And so that's why for the the fourth, sometimes fifth and sixth rounds are discussion rounds. So where you make a choice, because if you just leave it up to montage, the third round, like the results of the third round, it's normally something that nobody, in fact, I think it was last year, I did all the tallying, and the two images that were in the first and second from montage after this round were not in the first three of any of the other. They were like the fourth and fifth or eighth or 10th, but because of the law of averages, they were the ones that had been, had been ranked highest than everyone else. So it was very interesting to see that, and that's why we can't put in an image that nobody thinks should be that nobody on the jury thinks should be the first, like number one. And so we go through, there's a whole process that I go through where we then discuss it. We talk about what's important within the theme and the reflection of the theme, and then we discuss then we rate the images, and we do it according to a numerical system that I kind of come up with. But it's basically about kind of like weighting the numbers so that the most popular top image comes out, essentially. And then that's pretty much it from the point of view of the jury. Is there anything from the jurors who've been here and have been in parts? Do you think that there's anything that you wish you had known, or that you wish to share with the people who are also in the audience?
Hello. I'd like to say something on this.
Yeah.
Earlier, I think when we were talking about the second round, there's a time where we're like, there's some really nice pictures that come through, but then maybe because the person has edited them or something, and they fall under the 2 MB, and it's really painful to see some of those pictures drop through. So I really wish there was a way to tell people first of all, not to over-edit their pictures, because that's another thing where people over-edit the pictures and like you go turning it black and white, or you push the saturation too high and spoil what is really a really nice picture. So
yeah,
I really wish there was a way to talk to the people participating in the contest to not to do too much and now ruin their chances in the competition.
Yeah, not overly Photoshop or
Exactly.
post edit.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thanks for raising that, Eric. It is something that I was meaning to raise but didn't get onto the slide deck. It is actually something that I think it's one of those things that amateurs or people who want to become, it's like yeah, it's like a newbie approach to photography, that they're playing with all of the tools, and they think that by doing things in extreme that they will get noticed, yeah, but it actually spoils the photograph. And the other thing that I want to raise is the issues around AI. But this is kind of also, and with things like Canva and those other kind of like AI and filters, you really please also be aware that if you are using like even a high-end phone to take photographs, please don't add filters to them. Like, take the photograph for what it is. It needs to be raw, not raw as in the format, but raw as in like as it was shot, so it needs to rely on your skill and not on some kind of like dusky filter from Apple or from Samsung. I don't know, does anyone else have any opinion on that? You can generally see as well if it's been a photo kind of generated, phone generated kind of filter, but also there are filters in Photoshop and Canva and stuff. But to do post well and use those posts, to edit your photos really well, you have to be a professional. You have to know what you're doing. And so I wouldn't play with it if you are submitting to any contest, not just ours. Because yeah, you want to rely on your skill, I think, is the best way to look at it. Yeah. And the other element is AI. Like AI is obviously a new factor, and it's something that we've been very specific with about this year. It's a new criteria or a new contest rule, basically, is that we don't want any AI generated images. So anything that's obviously been created using a machine that isn't a camera, like, you know, AI processed something. But I understand, like with augmentation, if you run, and that's what I was talking about, like with filters and what Eric raised about kind of messing up the image with too much technical kind of tool manipulation or just manipulation, is that AI also does that there are tools now which are kind of like AI based that will, you know, that can manipulate the images as well. And it's just not, again, it's not something that we encourage at all. Eric, please go ahead.
All right. I also wanted to ask, maybe for later competitions that we have, if there's a way, this is probably something that needs to be done on the back end of montage, for us to add some of these tools to be able to combat these issues, especially AI, to be able to detect AI-generated images. Because it will, I'm sure that we will definitely see a lot of submissions that have already been generated by AI, and some people might miss it. So I don't know. It's something that would be implemented later on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the best way at the moment we can do it. I hesitate to promise that we can do anything in montage, because I know that there's a long list of requirement, you know, of wish list. There's a long wish list for different tools across the Wikimedia world, and I don't know if montage is very high on those. So I'm not sure that there's anything that we can do to automate that kind of thing. That would be absolutely awesome. Hilary, I'll come to you in a second. But what we can do is we can check the metadata. I think anything that that flags people and worries people, I think you click through to the, you know, to the original file, and we can check the metadata there. I think that might be the best way. I'm not sure, Eric, is that something? I think for this is what we'll have to do this round. Definitely. Yeah. And just to be clear also, like even in the last 20 images that we have, which we normally do the shortlist, the 20 as a shortlist, which is quite exciting, I think, because it's, you know, 30,000 images shouldn't just come down to 3 people or 3 images. So because there's been so many beautiful images, and sometimes it's just so sad to have to rank them into the final for, you know, 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. Yeah, so there's a question here, which is, how do you really verify that the image is not AI generated? And I'm not an expert in this, but as far as I understand, when you take a photograph, metadata goes with that photograph, and is then taken also into as a digital, it's like a digital identity that has, you know, name tags and stuff that has information related to the camera, all sorts of elements that then go up, then is then also put onto Commons. It comes with the image. So if you run it through like an AI generation or something like that, chances are that metadata, Eric, is it true? Anybody else want to jump into about this? But chances are that the metadata won't be there. So it will have lost like the relationship to Canon or to Nikon or to whichever kind of the original device was, because it will have been saved in a different way. Eric?
So yeah, definitely. While what that's that can definitely happen, but you know, sometimes people are very, very tricky, and you could go ahead to there are tools where you could use to actually edit the metadata. But what I would say for any of the judges is you just have to be you have to pay attention to details. You have to really, especially when it comes to the second and the third rounds, you have to really take your time to look at like the textures and the images, the details, you know, and to see if there's any like unnatural smoothing or blurring or anything. And then look, obviously, the proportions and the anatomy, if it's like a person. Thankfully, AI is not really getting it so well, so it's not always perfect. So I think that's what we just have to do, really pay attention until there's a tool that we could use to help us in detecting them when it's like something that we plugged in at the back end of montage. But for now, we just have to pay attention to details.
Yeah, and it's also things like the stuff that I've seen is like the depth of field is never that good. Perspective is not
exactly.
so,
It just looks off.
It's normally quite flat, or it's, you know, it's more kind of illustrative rather than real or a representation of reality. Yeah. So anyway, so those are the factors, and thank you. It's a good question. You can use your phone camera. It depends often on the quality of the camera that you have. We do get some, but unfortunately, obviously the higher quality images come from the higher quality phones, which are the most expensive phones. There's very few phones in the mid to low range markets that they're getting so much better, I have to say. They really are. But it's also about the quality of the lens that's on the camera, that's being used to take the photograph, as well as the quality of like the you know, how, whether it's a 4K camera or whether it's a, you know, a much lower kind of quality kind of digital, it becomes very complicated. But it's, yes, you can use your phone camera, and I use my iPhone for a lot of stuff that goes on to Commons. But in this case, yes, you can, but go for a more quality one if you are doing so. All right. And nowadays, like, there are like absolutely incredible phone cameras that are doing incredible things. So, but it will also, with that metadata that will come through, that it's come from your iPhone. So it's not like, yeah. So there will be metadata from your camera on your phone. But there will be no camera metadata attached to an AI generated image. So if it's AI generated pure, yes, there shouldn't be metadata. But as Eric was saying, you know, people can add stuff if they want to trick the system. We won't be so happy if we find that you're trying to trick the system. But if it has been an image that has then been augmented, so if it's a photo that you've taken and then you've run it through an AI kind of, whether that's something like Canva or whatever process, then that's a different thing, because that would still retain some of its metadata, because it would originally be an image. Mansita, does that make sense? but mostly it will be, yeah, they wouldn't.
Yes, thank you, Ayla.
No problem, no problem. Any other questions around the judging and any considerations around that? Yeah? And any other questions around organizing or being parts of a jury or being part of the first review? I just want the conflicts of interest are for the jurors basically and for the organizers. It's very clear for the organizers and the juries, especially at the national level. At the international level, there's no way basically that a jury member is going to win first prize. They know that as soon as they sign up for it, or they accept that they volunteer and come onto the international jury. They know that they won't win. So we do ask previous award winners from Wiki Loves Africa to be on the jury. And many times we've had Buba and we've had other fantastic photographers who've won and then have been on the jury. But they understand that they won't be winning that year at the international level. But they could still have won like in Cote d'Ivoire, or they could, if there was a national process in Cote d'Ivoire, or they could have still won in. If you're on a jury, you shouldn't really expect to win. But just for all of those people who are considering the first review, nobody in the first review round will be penalized for being on the first review round. You're not considered an international jury member. So, and in that case, if you're on the first review, your images will go forward and could potentially win. Does that make sense? So yeah, it's just to the conflicts of interest, it's better to declare if you are, if you have had your photographs in, or your wife's or your daughter's or your grandmother's photographs or your uncle's photographs are in. And yes, for the international jury, they do understand that they won't win that year if they are a member of the international jury. But we still, please, if you have anybody in your who you think should be on the international jury because they're a sensational professional photographer, please contact Hillary, because we've got some lovely people who have already been nominated. We also work with photographers and the jury members from the year before. And as I said, we also get we contact the previous Wiki Loves Africa winners in order to ask if they wish to be on in the contest, or at least as a jury member. So please share with Hillary anybody who you feel should be on the international jury. And if you wish to be on the international jury, then please ask as well, or please reach out to Hillary. But if you have been on the international jury or you have been a prize winner, you will be receiving an email soon. Is there anything else that you would like to raise while I still have you? Yeah? Okay, Solomon, you've got, if I wish to be on the international jury, my work doesn't stand a chance yet. Yes, unfortunately. But you can be on in first review. So you can be in the first review stage, and that will still go through. Yeah? Any other questions? Excellent. Thank you. You are So Daph Solomon has applied for the first review phase. I look forward to working with you, so does Hilary. And it's such a great, I love the first review phase. A lot of us are all involved in it because it's one of the, we see like images, but they're small when we're organizing Wiki Loves Africa, and through like, March, April, May, we're all, we see these images all the time, but they're all kind of like a little bit blur, they all blend in together. And it's so lovely being able to see each individual image in a really nice way. Please don't give me my own work. We won't give you your own work, I promise. We know that it's very tempting for you to give. Of course, you wouldn't have submitted anything less than 5 stars that you considered 5 stars. So we don't want to put you in a difficult position. So we will make sure that the people who are reviewing won't be able to see their own images. Great, everyone. Thank you so much for spending time with me tonight. And if you have any other questions about the jury process, if you want to be on the first review, please fill out the form that Hilary has shared in the links. If you want to be on the international jury or know somebody or want to nominate somebody for that international jury, please also reach out to Hilary and get him that contact because we are building the international team. If you do know any filmmakers, so I'm looking at you, Mansita and Buba, if you know any filmmakers for the filmmaking jury or the video jury, we are also at the moment in the process of building that. So
Okay.
okay. But Mansita, we won't ask you and Buba to be on because we don't,
Yeah.
we don't want to, we feel like you might have a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, I understand.
But if you have any suggestions for people that you feel should be on the jury, we would love to hear it.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you.
And we'll speak to you soon. Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone. Good. Cool.